nearly 3 decades of experience in equities and derivatives market. Srini has held roles in a professor of finance at the University of Memphis, a consultant to a big four accounting firms, and he advises several Fortune 500 companies across North America. He holds a master's degree in mechanical engineering and an started with esteemed guest, Charlie Caldwell. We are honored to welcome Attorney Charlie Caldwell to our financial seminar today. Attorney Caldwell has devoted his legal career to estate planning, business planning, and probate administration. Serving individuals and families with integrity and expertise, he has admitted to practice before the Supreme Court of the Tennessee in 2007 and United States Tax Code in 2008. He holds the prestigious designation of Accredited Estate Planner, awarded by the National Association of Estate Planners and Councils, recognizing his commitment and specialized knowledge in the field. Attorney Caldwell's academic background is equally impressive. He earned his Master of Law in Estate Planning from the University of Miami School of Law, his Juris Doctor from Regent University School of Law, and an MBA from the University of Memphis. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to the Attorney table.
Can we have everybody put their phones on silent, please?
Thank you, Jacob, for the wonderful introduction. Thank you, Jack, for coming to the Outfield Association. I already told him we are the biggest Indian association in Tennessee. We are, I would say, 50 to 60 Indian community. I happen to be where all people, so it's the place we can get nowhere else. So, most of our people are either Enfield or Memphis, and a lot of people also in our fields, like I don't want to talk about everybody, but the thing that most Indian community, especially Telugu community, are fledgling community. Most of them well-to-do, definitely getting upper middle class, much higher net worth individuals. There is a big need for planning for finances, and also the cream of the crop is estate planning. As a financial advisors or planners, we talk about the estate planning, the importance of the estate planning, but we can review, we can look, but we cannot draft it. That's legally done by only the estate planning owners. I happened to went to school with the Chad in grad school MBA. We crossed a few times, but we became friends after I started business, and we became back to each other. Hey, do what you do. So that's the way it started. Some of my clients and friends I introduced Chad because I had utmost confidence on him, and they're super happy. But with that, thank you for coming to our group presentation. And with that, I'll start from my perspective. This is about the financial planning. This is like a fifth or sixth time I've been presenting to this Telugu community. Last year, or I think somebody invited me. Like last year, they invited me. And this year, also they invited me. But this time, I don't want to repeat the same thing so that the content will be much different. And by nature, I'm a financial planner. Also, I'm a CFP. But beyond that, I'm a chartered financial analyst. My emphasis more on wealth management than the financial planning. The financial planning is extremely important. I do this more service to the community to talk about this, but I guarantee not a single word of sales here. We're not going to talk about this. This is purely information. That's guaranteed. Every word, everything we talk about is for you, and that's the reason we both came here. So with that, my core competency, my biggest strength is wealth management. However, I'm going to talk about the financial planning part, which is extremely, extremely important, especially for the younger community, younger people coming. They don't know certain things like IRAs, individual retirement accounts, 401k accounts, and even the others, like from the mid-career level people, a lot of them they don't even have wills, trusts. The reason is cultural. In India, if something goes wrong, automatically things will go to our heirs, our kids. Here, it's totally different. Every family, everybody has to have trust. I emphasize every first thing to my clients. Do you have a will? They say no. Do you have a trust? No. Do you have beneficiaries on your 401ks? No. Bank accounts? No. That's not so good. So basically we kick the tires, and coming to the financial advisor, financial planner, or going to the estate planning lawyer, it's worth every penny. Trust me. With that, I'm going to start. It's if not me or him or somebody else, whoever you're comfortable by all means, you need to have somebody to direct. Thing is, we focus on our core competencies are different, right? Your medical field, you focus on think about patients, hospitals, doctors. You're an IT professional. You focus on the day-to-day new technology and how to go through. You're a business person. You always focus about strategy. But when it comes to the pennies, dollars, we ignore. This is hard-earned money. People, there's some word called satisfies. We always satisfies. In a sense, we make the best decisions given the whatever the information we have, whatever the knowledge we have. But our knowledge is limited. So within the limited knowledge, we take the best decision that is a satisfying, that's a behavioral finance word. What it is, let's say you go to the bank, first thing is bank, they give you 0%, Bank of America 1%. You go to DCA, they give you 3%. So out of those three, you take the best decision, go to DCA. But have you known there is something called treasury notes, which is risk-free, government given, backed by the government, and you get 4.5%. And it's easy to do that. Rather than leaving thousands of dollars in your bank, do you have connection to the, you connect your bank account to the government side, treasury.gov, and you move the money, you get 4.5%. And you can buy many bonds, I'm going to talk about that. And it costs, you get to like 4 to 5% rate, and you don't pay federal taxes. So those kind of things you need to know. So every penny adds a few dollars. You think, hey, but it doesn't matter. And you have sitting there $100,000 giving you zero in your savings account. What good it does make, right? I'm going to talk a few of those things. As I said, my core strength is investing, and I focus more on equities and bonds rather than mutual funds and ETFs. Not that they're bad, but I have expertise in purely on the investment side for the past 30 years. I've been doing with that. I want you to ask as many tough questions about the market, the stocks, bonds, general market, interest rates, mortgage rates, anything. I'm going to answer your questions. So let me start my presentation. I'll focus on most on the investment side, and rest of this stuff, what people do, the common mistakes, and we'll go from there. Okay? With that, I'm going to move. This is the disclosure. I'm a financial advisor from Lakeland Wealth Management, and this is all the information purpose. You need to have a competent advisor or an accountant, whoever. They could help you. This is for information. From there, I wish you explore from there. Okay? And a lot of people, I mean, you have a lot of people here, a lot of youngsters, but at the end of the day, we are going to retire. It could be 10 months, 1 year, 10 years, maybe 20 years. And some of you look so young, maybe 30 plus years, right? Um, so what it is in the retirement reality is you have to expenses and income. And by Americans, by age 65 or older, 25% less spending than young consumers. And old American households are 40% less lower income than the younger ones. Because people are not trained to save money or invest. These are the 6 factors. One, lack of financial knowledge, and especially, oh boy, especially when it comes to the, I mean, IT folks, like, people, they're a lot better as people in the healthcare business. They are really vulnerable, plain vanilla, and so a lot of vultures around, give the bad advice. Those are the people who needs to go have good financial knowledge. And the second factor is inflation. Inflation will bite you. When people say inflation, people used to ignore. If you are living here more than 10 years, all you have to know is a 3% inflation, 2% inflation. You never ever seen inflation at 9.5%, right? That was happened in 2021. That's the worst. That means anything you buy today, and if you have 10%, rule of 72, that within 7 years, every price will go double. But look into the restaurants, for past few years, all the restaurant bills went double already. So because that's nothing but inflation. Then we also need to work about the burden of taxes. You need to look into, and you need to plan for, we are healthy and young, we're okay, but when it comes to 60 and above, that's where the health issues pop up. That's why we need to plan for it. So unpredictable financial markets. This is the biggest thing. All of our investments, either in the 401ks, IRAs, and all that, right? Markets go up or down. Anything will fluctuate. The biggest mistakes people do is people get panicked when things are wrong, and they pull the money at the wrong time. And they get burned. That's the biggest thing we need to look and discuss about. The next one is the procrastination. People ignore, hey, I'll take it easy. There is something in 401k plans, it's called status quo bias. What it is they set it and forget. And they think, okay, I have 30% stocks, 70% bonds, 50% things, there are 10 funds available, let's put $10 in each, and up to $100, and they think it's a diversification. That's a novice mistake, and they set it and forget it. That's the wrong thing. And even 1% of your $1 million is $10,000, right? That's a lot of money. And if you make few mistakes, it can going to cost you big time. And lack of knowledge, financial literacy, like 50% of it. Financial literacy, lack of knowledge. And the second thing is the inflation. Let's say if the 3% is the inflation, we think it's a 3%. Let's say a basket of goods we buy at Kroger for $50. The same thing you retire in 30 years, you have to plan for $120. The $50 now is $120. The same thing in the retirement, let's say you have $1 million. You think, okay, I go with the same $1 million. If you are planning for 30 years, next 30 years, it's going to be worth $400,000. Inflation is the biggest thing we need to worry about. The next one is the longevity risk. We think if you are 65-year-old, your probability of living up to 85 is 85%. And all the way to 90% is, for men, is 33%, for women is 45%. If you are a couple, one of you will survive until 90 and 63% chance. So one of you will survive. So that means you got to plan for the next what happens when they retire. As I said, have you anybody heard of rule of 72? Anybody raise your hand? No? 1 or 2? Yeah. So rule of 72 is
if you wanted to do, you don't have a calculator in front of you, and if somebody promoted an investment, oh, we can get to 7% return, right? So how much my money, how long will it take money to double? So it's not 100 divided by 7, right? So it's like how many, 13 cents, 13 cents is how much? 40 times, right? So it's not 14 years, it's only 10 years. 72 divided by 10 is 7. So because your money gets you money, and that money also grows, right? So that's the rule of compounding interest. So rule of 72, if you get the 6% return, and it takes 12 years to double, right? If it is 80% return, it takes only 4 years to double, right? So those are the things you need to look into. The next one is the study burden of taxes, right? Right now, the max tax percentage, can anybody say what's the max tax percentage? Marginal tax rate, okay, go ahead please. Yeah, okay. 37%? Yeah, you're probably right, 37%. If you are at 37%, you are tend to be high net worth individual, right? But if you have, capital gain taxes, that money is going to be 2.8% you got to add, right? So 39.8%. That's coming to now Obama tax, right? 2.8 for the ACA. So affordable care act they added 2.8%. So if you are the high net worth individual, it's not 37. Thank you, you're good. 37 is yeah. Not many people talk about it. So let's say you have $750,000 in your portfolio, you're 65, usually you're going to live next 20 years, and let's say it's 6% of the $750,000, it's like $45,000, that's the amount you want to spend per year. If you take this money, $750,000, and you invest, and assuming after inflation, your portfolio is growing at 5%. Let's say you're growing at 8%, 3% inflation. That's a 5% of the after inflated rate, right? So the money could last 20 years. But if there is a crisis like a health issue, all of a sudden we have a crime, then what happens is that money won't last no more than 30 years because $270,000, that's the average cost for 3 years if there is any health crisis. So we have to plan for all those things. So the next thing is, if you put money into S&P, S&P is the S&P 500. So do you know how many stocks are there in S&P 500? Anybody answer? 500, yeah, actually, yeah, 500, 505. Some people say 493. If you take out the max. so basically, for the past 14 years, like in 2010 to 2014, the cumulative return was 100%. And 2020 to 24, 97%. But if you look at the COVID time 2000 to 2004, it's 11%, maybe 11%. Has anybody remembered how much was the return in 2022? In 2020, everybody made money, right? Everybody is investing from home and Robinhood, all that, Webull and all that. Everybody made a lot of money. But in 2001, also they made 2021, also people made money. 22, boom, market dropped. The S&P dropped 22%. Nasdaq dropped 31%. And good old bonds dropped 15%. Everybody thinks bonds are safe, right? Bonds dropped 15%. So you got to plan. So it's don't put all that money. If you are good at financial acumen, and you got to have a plan for diversification. And how much, what it is, you got to have that. You got to plan. And the next thing is procrastination. People, okay, let's do it. We'll talk to somebody, let them help, and then postpone, and postpone, and postpone. That's the procrastination. You see that sometimes the things is holding you back is still all in your head. I think you got it, right? Actually, this seminar material I have is for 2-day class. So I have like 300 slides. I cut down to
presentation. So I cover most of the important topics to be useful. Some of them doesn't fit for 1 hour seminar, and I'll skip some of them. Please excuse that. But one day I'm going to present the 2-day class. If anybody wanted to come to the seminar, I'll do it for free, absolutely free. No work. The books, the companion book is $35. It's optional if you wanted to buy the book, you can get it. Otherwise, I'll do it for free. Okay? So that's my point. Basically, I use the same material, but it's much more in there. That's a 2-day class. But hey, today's retirement reality is 80% of the retirees are not confident able to cover the basic expenses. 23 are concerned that may not have enough money to pay for medical expenses. So I don't want to put all the sad stories. The good part is the Indian community, most of us are well to do. So it's not, these videos are common public. But I want you to be aware, just because you have wealth now, that doesn't, you will be wealthy in the future. You got to, making money is one thing, keeping yourself wealthy is that's the biggest challenge. Okay? So by all means you are successful people, but you got to protect your wealth. That's what investing is about. And what kind of lifestyle you have when you retire? 68 to 70% people, will travel. Some people say 60% spend it now when I have free time. And people want to pursue the hobbies and volunteer like that. Retirement or retirement. So because that's the reality is different. You have lots of plans and your clock is ticking. You are 62. And why I said 62, most people try to retire at 62, they get your answer. Yeah, you are qualified to get Social Security, but not fully on. What is the full retirement? Yeah, close to 67. Most people go after 60 or 67 years. Before that, there is some adjustments, 65 to 67. I would say for your age group, I would say 67. Yeah? But you can get 62, but you get 30% less now. Some people, they are waiting for 62 and they take the retirement at 62, at 32, because they need the money. So they compromise. And sometimes they cannot work. They're tired and they've been working for 60 years old. That's the thing. And where do you want to go? Everybody wants to go to Florida and Hawaii, right? And cost of living comparison. If you are living at Memphis, we are close to St. Louis. The living index is a little less than the national average. We are at 90. Memphis. If you wanted to live in New Jersey, not that enough, it's extremely tough. The index for New York is 230. BC is 150. And Raleigh, Tampa. Florida has some parts, like Las Vegas, you don't live in Las Vegas on your life. That's kind of tough, right? And the next one is taxes. Luckily, the state of Tennessee doesn't have taxes. Hopefully, Mississippi also going to get away from state taxes. But you have to have property taxes and you have any inheritance taxes and all that. So that's the thing. If you are thinking of relocating, look at all those things into this. And workers are expected to retire before 60. Everybody is saying they're expected to retire 14% of them. But in reality, is people 32% actually retirement age. You don't know what is unexpected things happening. But when you are young, when you are at this age, by all means start investing. I'm going to talk about what things you could do, what things you shouldn't do. So those are the extremely important things I'm going to cover. Retiring early age somewhat in between. Retiring early might require more aggressive saving. If you wanted to retire 60, 65, you got to invest. So that's the thing is comparing with Joe's. There are a couple of things I wanted to tell you. If you went to any neighborhood, can you tell how old is that house? you don't know anything. You came to Carnival, you went to the subdivision, and you wanted to know how old is their house. Can anybody guess? Half billion trend. I give you can. Every house you have a tree in front of the house, right? Can you tell by the size of the tree? And also, you can tell, you go to any neighborhood, if a neighborhood has, as soon as you get in, a Lombardi, what happens with all other houses in the subdivision? They have Ferraris, right? So, comparing with the Joneses, the same rotation you see, those two observations, if you watch closely, you can tell. So what happens is so much people, harass me. You don't want to compare with other people. You got to be on your own. If you ever compare with your next door Joneses, that's pretty mistake. I mean, as a human beings, we all do. We have all the age. And hey, it doesn't just because you're driving from your car, you're not there. But end of the day, it matters is how much balance you have in your checking account or investment account. That's what matters. So at least if one, and I'm not a guru or anything, but I see lots of people, all walks of life in the past 10 years. That's one thing I always warn people, be good with other people. You are on your own, and nobody will come after you if your home is you get into trouble, financial troubles, right? Friends are there, but only to a certain level. But anyway, that's a philosophy. What would you the largest expenses? Housing, of course, in the car payments, and the next, healthcare, food, personal taxes, utilities. And people say that taxes and debt, you can't escape over them, right? Those are the important things. And you prepare for higher medical expenses, for men, 65 old to cover medical expenses in retirement, we need 184,000 for women. This will be more because technically
They live longer.
yeah, very good. And the combined couple 300. And here is the map. If you want to take a picture by all means, you can take this one because unless you come to somebody like me, I can put it in the calculator and do that. By all means, this is one of the good slides, and I'm going to do this. This is a beautiful picture. If your current income is 90,000, you can put 900,000. I have no problem. Or put 500,000. By all means, put whatever number. And most people, your expenses are going to be 80% of it. But because when you retire, you don't have to pay for your kids' education. By that time, hopefully they are all settled down. Your home is already paid. So basically, your expenses, your costs are basically paid off in your home. So usually your expenses are 80%. So keep that number 0.8. So if you are 90,000. So that means 72,000 you need when you're retired. Okay? Basically, your expenses are 72,000. And when you retire, whatever your age, 65, whatever, you get Social Security. Okay? Approximately your Social Security number, you subtract that. It could be 40,000, it could be more, right? It could be less. You subtract that number, what's the number you get? 32,000, right? Now, go to the next one. And let's say the inflation is what? 3%. And 32,000, that is equivalent to 49,000 in 30 years. So, 25, that's what it is. If you are math geeks, 1.03 power 25, that gives you 1.557976. That's the number you want to do, 1.56. You multiply with that number, you get 49,086. So it could be any number, right? And then, if you are using 49,000, let's say 50,000 per month, per year, and your finances, your numbers are growing at 5%. Let's say your returns are 8%. After 3% is inflation, you got 5%. In 25 years, you need to spend 50,000. And how much money I need is 14 point, you multiply the factor 14.09, it came up with the 702. I did this on my calculator. I did the present value calculations based on the payment and the 25 years and the returns at 5%. It came to me as $980,000. So to survive at $32,000, you have to have $980,000 by the time you're 165. Yeah, please keep that in mind. If anytime I go and give a presentation where I put this number, then people realize, oh, okay, yeah. So that's a 32,000. Right? Most of you wanted to live at least like a couple hundred thousand. That's it, just an example for 100,000. So 100,000 means it wasn't value. So 3 times of that means you need to have $3 million, alright? You wanted to have $200,000, you wanted to travel and all that. That could be, so you got to put the 10 times, the numbers go even higher. So think in that perspective. One, the amount type of returns you are getting, and the amount of inflation is burning, and how much your money needs to go. So you have to have a plan. Without a plan, that's why financial planning is extremely important. People take it for easy, take it for granted, and by all means, I'm going to talk about your goal case and I understand later. The importance of saving is extremely important. Yeah, you can buy a car, a high-end car later, right? Think about your financial vision. Before you take any financial decision, there's a lot of emotional things you gotta be careful what you do. So again, current savings you have 150,000. It could be a number of things. It could be IRAs, 401ks, or your real estate gigs, whatever. And you got to multiply it to 2.75 investment bank or future value of the current savings, that is 430,000. That means in 15 years, if you are retiring, that's the factor 2.75. Estimated future retirement costs. In this previous example, we got 700,000, and you have the money. Future money is 430,000. That means you still need to have $288,000, $300,000, and you multiply the savings factor 0.039. That means it gives you annual savings. You need to have at least $11,000. So what happens with investment, savings and all that? If you save $500 a month, it's not much. But in 20 years, it's going to be $230,000. If you happen to save $2,000 a month, right, and put your money into investment accounts, that will end up into $1 billion in 20 years. So how to address the retirement income shortfall? Earn more on investments. Of course, higher return the better. Postpone your retirement and delay claiming Social Security. At 62, you get 30% less than what you supposed to get. At 67, you get 100% of what you get. But if you postpone all the way to 70 years, you get 24% more. So instead of $100,000, instead of $100, you get $24. If you retire at 62, instead of $100, you get $70. Those are the factors you can keep. How confident you feel? Only 21 workers spend very confident they have enough money. So those are the things. Evaluate sources of income. Social Security is designed to replace only portion of the individual income, right? And employee pension plans, that could be another source. And the tax advantage accounts and taxable accounts. Tax advantage accounts are your 401ks, your IRAs, Roth IRAs, and the taxable accounts is like your investment accounts, right? And on the tax advantage accounts, one is a tax deferred account and another one is a tax exempt account. Tax deferred are your 401ks. your IRAs, your SEP solo 401ks. All those are tax deferred. You don't pay taxes now, it cut down the taxes. But later, once you are at the retirement age, good part is they keep the can all the way to 72 years, and 73 years, then you pay taxes at that time. Until then, you don't have to pay taxes back. That money grows tax free. If you have an individual account, you bought an Nvidia stock, and you get $100 to $300, you sold it. You gain $200, right? In individual account, you pay taxes. If you are high tax, high net worth, then you pay 38.8%. And if you are lower margin, you pay 15%. And that money you invest in again, and you keep paying taxes every year, right? But in your IRA account or your 401k account, you bought it and sold it, and bought it and sold it, and the money kept growing. I don't want you to pay it, I mean, the multiple times you bought and sold, the amount will go higher and higher, right? So that's the thing. So that's the advantage of the tax advantage. Even if it is Roth IRA is a tax exempt, one time you pay tax and you have a Roth IRA, that money also grow, and but don't discard your 401k because your employers, most employers match your funds, right? So that's why we have to focus on your IRAs and 401ks also. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, so now they have 401ks too.
Exactly.
So just one-
Exactly, that's right. I'm going to talk about that in the investment plan. Yeah, you're right. The 401ks are pre-tax and 401k Roth is post-tax. Because why we encourage the Roth is you are at the lower tax bracket at this point, but as you get retirement age, you tend to be at the higher tax rate. And I don't want to fearmonger, but our debt is keep growing. Right now it's at $36 trillion. Used to be a lot lower before COVID. It's even a lot lower before housing market correction. Every time there is a correction, government keeps spending to keep the economy humming. And eventually the budget is going to need a huge generation. And when the time is that you see trade like anything, they deficit in the financial side, what they do, need the income. So what they call the government gets on, respect taxes the people. So your taxes tend to go higher. But for the past 2 decades they did not go up, but don't count on that. When rubber hits the road, we realize we need taxes. That's the only way. Then you see the cities and all that, when the city doesn't have the taxes, what they come up with some kind of intuitive thing. When you walk through this road, you pay the toll. You drive to this road, you pay the toll. Something that taxes will find that, right? The next one is a 401k. And I think this is a good time to go with this 401k class. 401k plan, you can put up to 23,500. There's a catch up if you are 50 and above, you can add 1,500. And only this year, between 60 and 63, you could add additional 11,250 instead of 7,500. And it's going to go back. Because I think one of the weird rule in previous Trump tax plan, there was something, I don't know how the accountants do it. They came up with this weird rule. It will go away from next year onwards. So use it while you can. That's okay. If you are between 60 and 68. Same thing, 401k, 403b, 457, they all go by the same income limit, and the catch up is exactly the same. And these are employees who start up and you can put up to $70,000. And money purchase plans and other 401k business plans, you can put up to $70,000. Profit sharing 70,000. And if you have a company solo 401k, you could put 70 grand. And I go a little further. SEPA, you can put 25% of your money to up to $70,000. If you have a business, you can do it. By all means, start a business. But you need to have income. As long as you have a business idea, by all means, register your business. Solo 401k, you can put up to $23,000. as an employee, you are also your own employer. You can put up to $31,000. If you are 50 and above, it's $34,750. That's big chunk of your earnings. You can put that into 401k. Also, so 401k, you can have a Roth option too. So it depends on your custodian, Charles Schwab, will give you 401k Roth. Right? Traditional IRA, say the retirement account, individual retirement account, is again the question is individual retirement account. You yourself, you can put the money up to $7,000. Even you are participating in 401k. And 8,000 if you are 50 and above. But there are income limits. Modified registered gross income if you are single, 79,000, married 126 week. The more details we can discuss later, but I think this is the information purpose. And if you put your money in your IRA account, if you are at 35% tax bracket, you save $2,450. If you are 50 and above, you can save $2,600. Here's the kicker. If you are 24% tax bracket and you are putting $7,000 in investment and 6% annual rate, and after 40 years, your money grow 800,000 versus 1.2 million dollars. It's $400,000. It's a huge amount to get that. And people say, hey, I have that money, 1.2 million, and end up that I need to pay taxes. So what advantage I have? Yes, bird in the hand. Have you heard that word, bird in the hand? You cut down other income, and you take the money from here. And you don't need to take money all the way to 73, first thing. And two, it's in your control. Government takes you to take only minimum required amount. You take bare minimum whatever is required, and that's why you keep it there. Let it grow. Roth IRA. There are eligibility requirements there. If you are certain income level, you may not be able to do the Roth IRA. However, there are always bad goes, right? But money you put it in Roth IRA, you put the money after tax. And that money, you pay, let's say $7,000. You are in 45% tax bracket, right? So that means like how much? $1,700. Without the minus, yeah, $1,750 you pay taxes. You are in 45% tax bracket. But that money you never ever pay taxes. Is there anything like a money without taxes? That's one of the options the government gave to us. So the Roth IRA by all means take advantage of that. Same thing with the 401k and Roth 401k. If you put your money into Roth 401k, you pay taxes now and put the money into Roth 401k, and the money grows tax free. And your employer, the matching thing, if they have it, there is a matching thing, they put the money into regular 401k, not the Roth 401k. Why would they, let's say you are making, let's say $100,000, they give you 7%, $7,000. If you don't put anything, guess what? Employee is so happy. He doesn't have to give you $7,000. Some people don't enroll into 401k. That is a big federal mistake. We want you to enroll into 401k. If you haven't, by all means you get to do that. And the employer, the match, they automatically put it to regular 401k, not in the Roth 401k. If they put it in the Roth 401k, because they have to pay taxes, right? They don't do that. And why would we do that? So you have two 401ks. If some reason you change the job, what would we do? What would you do? So there are three options, right? One, legally you can meet with the old employer, and if the money is above 5,000, they cannot ask you to take the money. So you keep it there. But however, because you're not employee of them, the fees related to this custodian, whatever the fund managers, they don't pay, you pay from your money. That's one option. And two, you can take all the money out and you got to pay taxes, right? Let's say you have 100,000. When you take the money out, you are, let's say, you're 45% tax bracket. you get 75,000. And government holds 20%. The custodian holds 20% of your taxes. They pick the taxes ahead of the time. So the 20,000 is gone. So you basically out of 100,000 you get only 55,000. So some people ask what happens to that 20,000. So when you file in the taxes, if you owe more than 20,000, you will pay that tax on. If you owe less than 20,000, then money is sent back. So but if you take the money in January, you got to wait until the end of the year, right? So why would you go to that hassle? That's the second option. And the third option, you can take the money and put it into your new employer's 401k. They have to take the money from the ex-past 401k to the new 401k. They cannot say no. However, for the biggest flaw, I would say flaw, biggest feature, let me put that way, is every 401k plan, if you're an employer or you're starting a 401k plan, the plan advisor recommends a few funds. Or is a few funds. One, they do an international fund, they do index fund S&P, maybe NSA, and then also they put their treasury bonds or savings thing, and then they also put one of the mixed funds, like a hybrid fund, the stocks and bonds. However, the funds have fees, right? So somebody like me, let's see if it's a order, and they charge you 1%. International fund, 2%. And it could be anything. And the performance could be anywhere, right? But index funds, they tend to be very close to the S&P 500. So that's the reason index funds are popular. When you do that, your options are limited. Why do I need to put money into only these 5, 6 funds? Because its rules are written by the rich people, right? For the rich people. The index, these companies, the mutual fund companies, whatever, they lobby so that the underlying assumption is every employee is a leader. They know nothing about business. They don't know how to invest and so on. But nowadays, there's still some companies that actually do self-trading. But as I said, most people may not be aware of the investments, may not have investment skill sets, and they get emotional. To take that away, they came up with the fund option. And why the funds charge higher fees? Then they came up with the index fund option. So there's something inside it. What's the other option you can have is you can open your IRA account, individual retirement account, and you can move the money from 401k to your IRA account. That's one of the best options. However, there is a flag. In the 401k, if some reason you get bankrupt or somebody creditors sue you, you cannot, they can take anything but not your money in 401k. But if something in the bankruptcy rule, then I have a lawyer here, I gotta be careful what I say. Like creditors, they can come after your IRA, but not bankruptcy rule, you're partially protected, am I correct? So that's the only flaw in the IRA accounts. So that's what it is. What is the best Roth or 401k, Roth 401k, Roth IRA? It's all up to you, and that's where you need some kind of financial professionals look into the numbers. This is true case. Last couple of years, maybe last 2 or 3 years, I spoke to quite a few people from, I don't want to name, some bigger organizations. They either took the voluntary retirement or they were forced to move to a different job. That's the time we looked into how to put the money, where to put the money, whether to convert it to IRA, Roth IRA, all that good stuff. And before, I'll give you one, I don't know if it's a warning, but I'll give you a heads up. Anything you do, those kind of big decisions, please talk to somebody competent person, somebody who you can trust, and let them, and double check the numbers, because you're dealing with big numbers. All your working is, you put your blood and sweat to make the money. And when it comes to the financial decisions, please do not take any quick decisions. Let bounce your bounce, let I want you to bounce the numbers to somebody else and let them look into it, then come up with the numbers, right? That's what I think. IRA conversions, Roth IRA conversions. If you have an IRA bond, this kind of really complex math, I'm not going to discuss that kind of thing. But basically, simply you got to pay taxes on your money, and then allocate the law. And the next options are annuities. There are, you can put money when you come to the retirement. You can put the money into annuity. Annuity is like insurance savings. Let's say I have $1 million. When you say to the insurance agency, this is how it works. It's simple. I wanted to explain. Then there's a lot more in depth, but I wanted to give you a big picture of how annuities work. Annuities are, let's say you have $1 million in the city at the retirement. And then there are three types of things. One is fixed annuity, and the other one is variable annuity, and the third one is the index annuity. So basically only the three types. If you go to the fixed annuity, and the other side is insurance firms. Insurance firms, they say, hey, we give you 5.5% or 6%. It's all the rates are depends on the present day interest rates. If the Fed is cutting the interest rates sooner, you would rather want to go ahead of them and negotiate the best rate. If interest rates cut down, the rates will go down. So what they say is, let's say they want to give you 5%, all your money. So 5% of 1 million is how much? 50,000. So every year you get $50,000 until you are alive. So let's say you are 60 years old and you put that money for 6%, like 5%. If you do 20 years, so 20 times 50, like $1 million of your money also grow. And if some reason you die at 75, what happens to that money? No, there's what insurance makes you lose. So they want, there's a lot, from the insurance point of view, they have longevity risk. And you also have longevity risk. If you think you're going to live longer than 80 years, who's going to lose? The insurance firm. So basically they're not fools, right? They know the numbers and they see based on your age expectation, like how long you're going to live. And based on that, they write down. It's a game with a large number. They don't know what to do. The next one is variable insurance. Variable insurance is they put you dictate them where you want your money to be there. And they put it in the S&P 500 index or NASDAQ, whatever. Based on the returns on that, your income will be there. So why people do that? Some people want diversification. They put some money into variable equity, some money into fixed income. The other one is the index annuity. Index annuity is nothing but the variable annuity is like more mutual funds. Index annuity is S&P and NASDAQ kind of thing. How I am doing with the time. Okay. So I started 7-ish. Okay.
Yeah.
7. I don't be aware of tax. So I'm going to skip this how variable annuities, fixed annuities are. So different income annuities are basically you don't get the income right away. They give you income after 20 years or whatever. And how the indexes annuities are taxed, only some portion of the money will be taxed. Because they're giving some principal, they're giving the interest portion. So based on that, your taxes are going to be. And the next one is Social Security. I'm going to go at a higher level, but I'm not going to cover because of the time, but I want to touch some points here. Eligibility is, they have the called 40 work credits. Every year you work, you get 4 units of it. And if you work at least 10 years, that you qualify to get the Social Security. So make sure you work at least 10 years. Or pay taxes at least 10 years, and either you're an employer or you have a business, whatever. Make sure you work for at least 10 years.
So for this, do you need to be in US to get this, or whether if you're in India, still you get this?
That's kind of a legal question, but if you are a citizen or a green card holder, as a green card holder, you cannot stay more than certain amount, right?
Yeah.
But if you are an American citizen living outside US, yes, you get free. Probably not. You got to be. Yeah, because it's a legal status, right? But in cannot be H1 forever, right? That's the thing.
For now,
But if whatever the money you pay, you go back, you don't get the money. You lost. That's the sad part. Yeah. I mean, people don't notice, as a student, you never pay social security tax, right? But if you're an employee, it's kind of sad too. You work like 15, 20 years, and you went back to India. The money you already paid to the government, it's not there. But in previously there was some legal challenges people did. I don't know whether successful or not. I don't know the answer. But I don't know. But if you are a citizen, you live in Mexico. A lot of people live in Mexico, and the people live in Portugal, other countries. They get their social security money, they balance it in the bank. But Medicare, no, you don't get it. Medicare is at least. Unless you live in the US.
Same question of 401k, like if
No, it doesn't matter. Government money is yours.
but it doesn't relate to citizenship.
No, that's your one. That's you are saving. That's your employer paying you. You are saving. That's your one. Social security is kind of unfair. If you are, I mean, it's unfair for a lot of people. Yeah, if you are high net worth individual, you pay whatever next. But you get, for social security is a maximum. So it's kind of complex, and it's a political development over there. It is based on average, highest to 35 years. So the max, let's say, you need the basically 10 years, but the highest earnings in the last point, the max 35 years, based on that, they calculate how much you qualify for, how much you can get there. The spouse is also an eligible worker, exposed. If you marry somebody, married for 10 years, automatically that person gets that money. She can qualify for that survival spouse, as a survival spouse. However, she cannot marry, that's the thing. And the social security also, it's not fixed. Let's say if you are getting like $4,000. The next year it's not 4,000, it just for the inflation. In 2021, the inflation was so high, but 2022, they gave 6% adjustment. In 23, they gave 9%, almost 9% high on the social security. And anytime the inflation goes down, they are going to adjust the inflation factor. So that's a good part of the social security. The earliest you can get it at 62, you qualify at 67. And the latest is 7. Okay, here it is. Okay, every year it is growing up to 67, right? You reach 70 years old, and you still don't want to take it, you lose. So the max they can go all the way to 70. After 70, they don't do it. Okay? I mean, you're not there, but it's good to, you are aware, you should be aware. Yeah, if you are born in 1955, your full retirement age is 66 2 months. If you are born after 1960 and after your retirement age is 67. Here in the audience, you know, about 67, right? And yeah, I'm not going with the math, with the social security makers and all that. And yes, works record. You are married at least 10 years. You have attained a minimum age required, in that case 62. You are unmarried. It doesn't matter whether your ex is married or not. Your own worker benefits will be lower than ex-spouse benefits. If your benefits is more than your ex-husband plus ex-wife, why would we take care of it like this? Rather take your own, right? That's the problem. Yeah, that's like a. So how to manage tax liabilities, ordinary income, wages, rents, withdrawals, and here's the tax bracket for 2025. Somebody said 37% of tax liability. Are you a finance guy or are you in the tax? High school? Good for you. So long-term capital gains. Okay, here's the thing. Short-term capital gains are 37%, right? But the long-term capital gains, like you bought a home, investment home, you held it more than 365 days. When you sold the home after 365 days, the gain is considered long-term capital gain. The long-term capital gain is 50% or 40%. 0% is very, very, the income minimum has to be very low. So 50% is already close to $250,000. Anything above that, it's a 20% rate. And qualified tax is 20%. Here is the thing, married filing joint, if your income is less than 96,700, you don't pay any taxes on the long-term capital gain taxes. Imagine you are making 100,000, 95,000, and you invest your money, and you have a gain or whatever you want. Basically, you pay no taxes at all. Anything below 600 is 550%. Overwhelming of majority of the people's income is less than 600. That's quite a big number, big chunk of people, but majority of the people, most Americans fall under for 15%. Anything above 600, your long-term capital gain is going to be 20%. There you go, this is all of it's not political, it's a joke. It should be pointed, because they call Affordable Care Act during the Obama, they passed the bill to cover that. They said, hey, when anytime the rich people making money, let's take 3.8% additional money. So first, the 3.8% tax. And I know people who have signed up there, I'm going to send the tax sheets, and if you all okay with you guys, I have a market investment letter, personal finance letter. It's not my mostly, like the subscriber financial media letters from Wall Street Journal, Barron's. Those need to pay. I paid already about the name. If it's okay, I will sign up your name so you get every week by Friday. All the most useful information is great to read, and it keeps you up. It keeps you up to date on taxes, financial news, and all that. It's purely unbiased news coming from Bloomberg, Wall Street, and all the big financial institutions. Yeah. Then the standard deduction and itemized deduction. Either you can take the standard deduction or itemized deduction. It's up to you. And with these Trump taxes, now most people simply can take the standard deduction. You don't need to do the itemized deduction unless you have a big house in our home, and then you can so high gains. So then maybe you could use directions. If you have big donations, big charity contributions, that's the one of those things you can think about. So mortgage interest, only up to 750,000, you can take the interest rate up. Anything below 750,000, your debt, you cannot take the interest. State and local taxes, 10,000. I think have they changed it to 40,000 yet? Not yet. I don't think it's passed. And I'm just skipping the taxes for the sake of the time. But if you come to sign up for my 2-day seminar, I'm going to go much more deeper for that. I cover all this stuff. And I have this savings account and all that good stuff. Then I'm going to go back to a few minutes on the health and insurance plan, and then the investment plan. Okay? Then I'll get to the retirement plan. So I will thank you for. I don't want to go over this. So far, everybody's enjoying. Just so I don't want to go over the same thing again. You already know. Sometimes you know the stuff, but I wanted to get your attention and make it more engaging. The basic relationships in healthcare, you see healthcare, you need to have health insurance, long-term care, disability insurance, and liability insurance, and life insurance. So Basically, I wanted to cover the high level. The reason we take the insurance is health insurance. Most of us have through employers plan or individual ACMs or whatever. And the long-term care, mostly, after 55 or 60 years old, people take the long-term care. Medicare covers only certain portion. Some of the things Medicare doesn't cover. That's what's more in detail we can talk about. But a disability income insurance, a lot of professionals, especially physicians, lawyers, they all take the disability insurance. If something goes wrong, you cannot perform, that covers the liability side. And the other thing, liability side, how many have the universal insurance? It's like umbrella policy. Umbrella policy by all means, you all should take. Your auto insurance costs only 100,000, 150,000. If there is an accident, one of the lawyer, I think Chad or somebody just said that, it could cost big amount, right? It's 7 years of your annual earnings and whatever net worth you have, they can come off you. So universal life is relatively a lot cheaper. Whoever you have the auto insurance, by all means, umbrella insurance, by all means, take paying up to $2 million. It doesn't cost too much. If you have teenage kids, it could go a little bit up, but not that much. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it okay? Should we go short-term or long-term?
Actually, you are an employee, right? So most of the employees cover the short-term disability and the long-term disability, and some of them maybe better to take both of them. I would say, yeah, if you stop working, what happens? You have the health insurance. Some reason the company went to the the corporate, you lost the job. By default, they have to pay corporate. Corporate insurance is little expensive than your employer, but whatever the employer was paying in the group, they get it cheaper. That price you get it. Basically, all the features what the employer had. It covers only 18 months. Within 18 months, the assumption is you may get another employer, you get another job. So they cover 18 months, pretty decent amount of time. And if you don't want to use it too expensive, then you can always buy it healthcare.gov. Actually, believe it or not, before Obama period, it was a real nightmare. But now, pre-health, existing health, it's not a determining factor to offer the insurance. Now they have the silver code or whatever the right points. By all means, if you don't have health insurance, that's not good at all, especially in the US. So you gotta be careful. And then Medicare, because we don't have any above 60 here, for the time's sake, I'm going to skip this one. They have the Part A, B, C, D. Before 62, right, 3 months before 62, we get the notification from government, but you don't trust your main person. The place I work, I never trust my main person. So by all means, you got to be checking it to 69 years and 9 months as soon as you take the clock. You need to register with the Medicare. If you don't, the penalties are big. So I don't know why, but Part A and Part B, they cover the hospital and the medical insurance. And Part C is the Medicare Advantage, and Part B is for the pay for the drugs, D for drugs. And so basically it says the importance of taking the long-term care. And basically I go to the insurance part. Here you go. This is the long thing. Are there any insurance agents here? Are you? Oh, okay. I'm ready for insurance. But I don't want to hurt your feelings. But if you are insurance agent, there are term insurance, the whole life insurance. And who doesn't have the health insurance? I mean, life insurance. I'm not selling any. Okay. But the thing is, you know the difference between term and whole insurance? Most of you know that, anybody doesn't know. Okay, there you go. Yeah, the assumption is nobody knows. Like, term insurance, that's the thing is, you have a house, you have insurance, right? You have a car, you are forced to take the insurance, right? There's insurance in the world they lock it. And then of course there's so many accidents and all that, because it's a moving object, right? And you know your life, the whole family relies on your life, right? If something happens to you, your spouse needs to suffer, your kids needs to suffer. So that's why you take the insurance. The thing is, most people work from what? 16 years in the US, 80 years in full time, 80 to 65, right? After 65, you wanted to change the job and you wanted to go for another company and you say, I'm a best job programmer. Do you think the other company will hire you? Your chances of getting this new job is extremely low, right? But basically, your financial capital when you are 80 years old, close to it, right? As you get to 65, your financial capital goes high, right? So you are protecting financial capital. As you get 65, you have the highest financial capital. You need to protect that amount, right? And the human capital is pretty much the highest at 16, 18 years old. When it comes to the 65, it comes to the zero, right? Your human capital is going to go to zero. So the thing is, you need to protect your human capital. Financial capital is there, the human capital, because you can work only up to 65. I mean, just keep it, you can work in practice more than that. So you need insurance. Suppose you are 45 years old, something happens. What happens? Next 20 years of your earnings, you're not going to be with your kids and spouse, right? Your kids in the college, they need to go, you need, your home needs to be paid, and you have plans to live, you have to maintain the same lifestyle. To protect that, usually you need the money because your working age money is already 65. So most of the people, they take the insurance all the way to 65. Beyond 65, you are not earning. Your human capital is pretty minimum. Why do you need the insurance? That's the reason the term insurance scheme. Before it's all whole insurance. So a lot of people take the term insurance. The term ends at whatever the time period. Usually 65. Then you don't take any insurance. You don't need that. I mean, life insurance. Yeah, health is important, but that's a different story. The assumption is by 65 you already made your reach your financial goals, right? That's the thing. The whole life is all your life. That has two components. One, the term, related to your life, and then there's a cash portion. You add some extra cash, and that cash grows. They put the money into bonds, whatever the money, 4%, 3% grows, okay? So that's the biggest challenge is why people push the whole insurance. If you somebody sell the term insurance, he gets like maybe $1,000 to sell the term insurance. If I sell you the whole insurance like $1 million, how much you know how much I get? $80,000. That's why you have the second review. So that's the thing. So then the universal life, whole insurance you pay that. Universal life is a flexibility in the payments. So if you wanted to pay $1,000 a month, that's okay. If you pay $800 a month, your amount will go down. The insured amount will go down. And so you have a flexibility. So variable universal life is the money invested into multiple investments, based on the returns, the things will change. And you have the flexibility. So basically that's what it is. Here is a good example. Please pay attention to this one. Here in this example, what are your dependents annually? Suppose your spouse is making $70,000. Sorry, if you are not there, how much money your dependents, your spouse and kids need? 70,000. Okay? And the spouse income, let's say 30,000. So your spouse still working, right? She doesn't stop just because you're not there. So she's 30,000. And Social Security, when she retires, she gets 20,000. The combined income is 50,000. So you take out the 70,000 to 50,000. The amount needed to be insured is 90,500. That is the amount she needs to get every year, right? To get at least a 7% return and produce like 40,000, how much money you need? 280,000. So 280,000 times 0.07, you get like 90,000. That's the math. When you're looking for the amount of the term insurance or whatever, that's kind of a basic math. So if somebody come and tell you, oh yeah, based on this, you need $2 million. Okay, let me do my math. At least you have this, right? But that gives you some ballpark. So you can take a picture if you can. The term insurance, permanent life insurance, cash flow, these are all the features of the insurance. Okay, here's this is my final thing. I'm going to talk and then because I don't want to take more than an hour. So this is the one. This is my core competency about investing. That's what I do. I invest in my clients' money. I put money into stocks and different areas. Biggest concern people talk about how the interest rate is going to be, what the stock market is going to be, how the things work, and that kind of thing. I've been investing for 29 years. This is my 38th year. Since right after college, I started investing in school of hard knocks. So by all means, throw cover balls after this presentation. I'll answer even in between. I'm more than happy to answer questions. So first of all, when you are doing your planning for your retirement and all that, you need to have a balance sheet of your assets. What kind of assets I have? I have land. I have a land. It costs something. I have a building. It costs this much. How much equity assets? Equity assets is like stocks, right? How much stocks we invested in? Fixed assets is like nothing but bonds. Debt assets, fixed principal and a bit similar. Cash, how much I have. And basically, whatever you have, you need to know, take an Excel spreadsheet, by always put all those numbers on one side. And then your liabilities, how much bodies I have, how much auto loans I have, how much student loans, bank loans, credit cards, all that stuff is the liability. So assets minus liabilities, your net equity, right? When you have the house, let's say your home is $500,000, you put $20,000 down payment. So your asset, your equity is like 200,000, right? Your asset is 500. Your liability to the bank is 300. 500 minus 300, so 200,000 is your equity, right? So the same math here. By all means, I urge you all, if you haven't done that, by all means put that number. I have my 401k here, my wife 401k here, my kids savings are here, college savings are here. I have land in India, that's fine. You have properties in India. You put that in dollar terms. Usually you go to US, right? You go to this course and pretty good, right? And same thing with the liabilities, how much debt I have. So that gives you rough ballpark number your net worth. That is extremely important when you are doing, and you often check on and off every 6 months, once in 6 months. Hey, how much my stock value went up? How much debt I already paid off? So that way that gives you a big picture of how much it is. And then when you come to the investing side, am I investing for growth? Am I investing for income? And investing for preservation of the capital? Yeah, I don't want to do too much growth, but I want to keep that money, but I want a little bit growth. Am I investing for tax benefit? And what's my time frame? How much return I need to get? And when you are investing, it's economic risks, the market changes by the interest rates and all that. And then the market always fluctuates, right? And when you are investing in individual companies, you have the company specific risk. And when you are investing in bonds, and there is interest rate risk. when you are investing in the credit, and you get bonds, they always have credit cards, they have a credit risk. And of course, you have the inflation risk. So real rate of return. Here we have the $20,000 initial investment. Rate of return is 3%. Amount earned out of the 20,000 is $600. And you pay the federal tax 24%. And after tax return, after paying 24%, the leftover is 456. So the after value of the after tax amount is 20,405, 2,456. And inflation rate is 5%. Hope not. Just in this case, let's say 5%. So the real money, actually, it was 90,482. In 1 year, your $20,000 you started, though you got 12,456, the real value of your money is 90,452. That rate of return is what? Negative 3%? The real rate of return. The true rate of return actually nominal is 3%, but actually is 2.59%. So that means your rate of returns, they got to be higher than the inflation. Right? So anytime, there's a lot more to it, but when it comes to the financial planning, people will ask me, hey, how much return? I ask them, what do you want? How much return do you want? Can you give me 25% return? 20% return, 5% return. See, this is very subjective, right? But theoretically, you got to think like this. It's nothing bad question, because we are always self-centered. Every human being, right? We wanted to get the maximum utility, right? Everywhere, including myself, right? Thing is, you have to look forward. When you are planning for the retirement planning, hopefully this couple of things will keep you on your toes. Let's say, how much money I spend every year when I retire? This is the question. So, let's say I want to spend 100,000. And as we calculated, next I'm going to give you how long I'm going to give. 25 years. So 25 years, 100,000 in a year, and you got to incorporate 3% inflation, right? 100,000 today is 3,000 next year, 106,000 next year, right? It keeps growing higher and higher. So you bring it all the way to the present value. It's going to the next 30 years cash flow. You put it down and bring it to now. Let's say you came up with the $2 million. That's what amount you need. Let's say $2.5 million. Let's say $2 million, just to be easy for us. And right now you have $1 million. You're 40 years old. So what you need to do is, you're 40, by 65 you need $2.5 million. If I keep the money as it is, how much required rate of return? You know the future value, you know the present value. Based on that, let's say your required rate of return 5%. So you need to plan, this is the question, not for 20%, not for 30%. The minimum required rate is how much? 5%. The typical stock market gives you 8%, let's say. So if you put your money, let's say bonds give you 4%, less volatility, and let's say treasury bills. And if you put the mixture, 70-30 gives me that 5%, or 80-20 gives me that, or 60-40 gives me 5%. That is your base, right? So your required rate of return is based on how much money you have, how much you need to have. So if your required rate of return is 12%, so don't put your money into options, right? That means you need to put more money, deposit more money to the extent. So you may need to put 20,000 a year. Got the point? So that's the thing. No matter what you do, you can't beat the S&P 500 forever, right? Very few people will do that. So your basic assumption is stocks 10%, bonds 3 to 4%. The combination. This is the minimum you can get from the market from safely. Based on that, I may not be able to reach my $2.5 million because I have only 300,000 here. So that means I need to put more money into the system. Or, I need to, what you can do? Push, kick the can further, right? Or instead of retiring at 62, I need to retire at 65, 66. The more time it gets, guess what? It gets tougher. Because they get more older, right? So bird in the hand is two in the bush. The more money you save, the better off you are. Got it? So you can buy this so-called Ferrari once you retire. Just driving Ferrari doesn't mean anything. Your Toyota gets in the same place, just like any other Ferrari. After a year or two, the Ferrari gets, the color fades away. And people say, ooh, Delta, they don't pay attention, right? When I bought my Tesla, everybody said, hey, you have a nice Tesla. I don't know why I bought it. And now nobody says it because there are so many Teslas and everybody has a Tesla. First of all, I didn't buy it to show off, but don't get me wrong. So thing is, it doesn't matter how much you have, what you have. So what it is, whatever the utility you get it from the initial euphoria will dies down. If your diamond necklace looks so pretty when you go to first diamond party, I'm not that everybody look at that. After next time you go, oh, same diamond necklace. You go home, they said same diamond necklace, but let's buy some other.
So you're just suggesting we should buy more?
There's no way. I'm not keeping anybody. The thing is, but before you take any big financial decision, buying a home, buying a car, buying a diamond necklace, then you can look into what's my kids' education, what's my retirement goals, how I reach that. Even I have enough money, can I realize the same lifestyle? Even if you meet all the goals, hey, I wanted to give 100,000 to some charity in Calcutta. Hyderabad, Shirdi, whatever you want to. Then you have additional goals, right? You may have emotional goals or devotional goals, whatever. But you may not be able to do that unless you reach your target, right? So that's why it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, you have to keep thinking about futuristic things. Warren Buffett, right? His worth is $160 and he already gave $120 billion and maybe $280 to $300 billion. The guy lives in the same house for the past, I don't know how many years. I mean, some people get utility of buying gigantic homes and nice cars. But by all means, if you can afford it, you do it, don't get me wrong. Those are secondary, right? The primary thing is my basis covered or not. And then you can think about other stuff, right? I think if I can give you one good point, that's it. There are the asset classes, cash and cash alternates, and stocks, mutual funds, bonds, and fixed principal assets, tangible assets. Tangible assets are like gold, silver, material, alternative investments, like land, buildings, those things, right? Investing, income investing. One, actually, returns comes from a couple of things, right? One, capital appreciation, and the second one is the yield. When you buy, let's say, part of FedEx stock, because FedEx is most popular. One, the capital gains is your $100 stock becomes $150. And the dividend yield is every year they give you $5. So you have the $1,000, you get $50, no matter what, right? So that is so your net return, total return is not just capital gain, you also have the dividend, interest income, dividend income, something. So dividend paying stocks usually get mature companies. Like FedEx pays the dividend, AutoZone doesn't pay the dividend, right? Because AutoZone is going back faster. They feel they're better off, they reinvesting the money into the companies. So those are the growing companies. The other one is the mature companies. Yeah? Why do you want to invest in stocks? Stock returns are historically, roughly his math is 11% in last 30 years. Why I am saying is, there are so many other alternates. There is real estate. Real estate historically returns are 3%. Bonds, 3 to 4%. Stocks, 11%. I'm talking about generative. If you have a magic hand, you found a nice land, nice property, it could get you a good deal. But I'm not saying that, right? I'm talking about the law of averages. Average numbers I'm talking about. This is the one I did my own research. So this is my research here. If you go to casino, what are your odds? Anybody blackjack? Anybody play blackjack? Right, just you play once or twice, right? Nothing simple, right? It's nothing simple. But if your chances are less than 50%, right? If it is more than 50%, then house get busted, right? So that's why chances are very low, right? Like 50-50, 49-50, 40-50. If some other games even more. But if you go to invest the same money in the stock market, 70%, this is, I draw the picture from 1929. You see that picture in the middle of the thing? 72% will always market ends up in positive side. So the chances of losing is only 30%. So that's what I meant to say. Even in the worst of worst case, like 2000 market dot-com crash, a market drop, Nasdaq dropped 30%. I got busted. I was learning. I was always learning. Just like Bitcoin, those days every day, the money used to double. I used to double my money in one week. It happened many times in my stocks. That's but I learned a hard lesson. I did not know how to. I could have gone to some kind of financial. Then somebody said, I just ignored. I don't need to do that. I was a superman. I realized I don't know what you have to do. But the stocks, if you invest in the equity market, the reason I'm saying is governments, you know why the world was happened? To different the markets, not the economy. I mean, economies are for markets, right? And Trump is talking about penalties, this and that by America. He's protecting American products. Right? This is the most wealthiest country, most successful nation. And there is one and only Google, one and only Microsoft, one and only Oracle, one and only AI companies, one and only NVIDIA. This is the place everybody look at. Silicon Valley is the capital, intellectual capital of the world. New York is the financial capital of the world. We are in a great place. See, even Bill Gates' money is in stock market. Fred Smith money, Fred last time, Smith family money is in the FedEx. Everybody believe in capital. I'm not talking about capital in some sense. But America historically produced at least 9 to 10% growth. There's one and only Coca-Cola. If your money is not working when you are sleeping, that means you are not doing justification for your money. You have Coca-Cola. Somebody in India, China, Japan, somebody is drinking when you are sleeping, right? McDonald's. Okay. Google, 24/7. Everybody's watching YouTube, they're taking the ads, right? Twitter. So innovation comes from here. You are in the right space. Invest. But what I'm saying is, take advantage where you are. There are so many distractions, but you buy and stick to that, and you're good. And you do well, fine. Don't shoot for stars. Buy some index funds if you don't know investing. Just S&P 500, consistently giving you 11%. So rule of 72, how many years it takes to double? 7 years, 7.1, something like that. Rule of 72, right? 72, yeah, there you go, less than 7 years. So by all means, invest into the equity markets. So wisdom of the spheres. Somebody saw the person in Bangladesh Street. He talked about the people, I'll tell you one more thing. Here, the investor's chief problem is, and even his worst enemy is likely to be himself. People get emotional. When market is dropping, people get panicked and do the wrong things. When people think going high, people target their movie stars, right? Because they made $100, $200, whatever. They wanted to show off, right? The world is full of foolish gamblers, and they will not do as well as the patient investor. You got to have the patience to invest, right? The most important quality for the investor is a temperament, not intellectual. Intellect, temperament. So you don't have the euphoria. So how many people saw the renovation he talked about the was it Dukesh or Sukesh Vegataswara. What it is, it doesn't, you don't celebrate when things are going high. You don't cry when things are going down. So you got to be emotionally stable. The people who are emotionally stable, those are the people who are going to. I mean, there's a wisdom in there. What he said, I agree with that part. So it's a hundreds of years of civilization. That's what I meant to say. That people fly high, they don't succeed for a long time. That's what I meant to say. So investing is about temperament. And all you need to do is just buy some good index stocks companies and just hang out there and stick there. And you get 10% no. Some years you get 30-40%. Don't celebrate. Sometimes you go 25% below that. You don't sell in the wrong time. Just hang out there, stick to it. That's what I mean to say. 1 year period, S&P for past 20 years, 30 years. Loss is 24%. Most of the events, 77% went up. In 5 year period, 70% time it went up and went down 30%. And if you look at the 10 year period, like 86% market went up, only 50% went down. So your chances of winning is high when you invest for the long run. And if you see my friend Mario Gavella is a multi-billionaire, he posted something. He put like when 20s stocks went 40%, bonds went maybe 5%. And you see that 30s, 20s, 10s and all that. And average since 1926, stocks are 10.4, bonds are at 5%, treasury bills at 3.3, inflation is 3%. If you want to beat the market, you have to put money into stocks to beat the inflation. And yeah, T-bills, municipal bonds, T-bills are like cash, you get like 3% return, if you put bonds around 3.5%, 4%, and stocks around 11%. As I said, bonds, you can play the multiple laddering and all that, and I'll cover this in the next 2 weeks, I guess. And you know the ETFs, mutual funds and all that. The stocks have more risk. Risk means volatility. Things move back and forth, up and down. That's what we call risk. They throw the statistic, the standard deviation. Standard deviation is 20%, 50%. That means 50% times the stock go up and down. But don't pay attention to all these statistical numbers. And invest into the stocks, diversify, and do the dollar cost analysis. Just about the Wednesday, I am going to conclude this and I'll take questions and answers after my friend Chad is a great estate planning lawyer. I'm telling because some of my customers, my clients, I help them, and I also work with a couple of other lawyers. But the detail of what Chad does and the explanation he does is extremely simple, average people can easily understand. And he's much more eloquent than me. With that, I'm going to give it to Chad.
Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful. I have never had the honor of listening to speak where I did not walk away substantially more intelligent than when I started. So I think we would all say that we've learned a lot already tonight. I'm not going to spend as much time on my material. What I'm going to do is we get a couple of slides up here. So these slides are super professional, very well done. Mine are very basic because I want to drive some points home with you. They say that it's you hear something, you forget it, you see down to make sure that all four legs were under the chair? Nobody, right? That's not something that we do. We trust that the chair will hold us up. We say there's a chair here, it's obviously safe, I'm gonna sit in this chair, right? Well, unfortunately, a lot of people take estate planning the same way. They say, it's probably gonna be okay, I don't really need to do anything, I don't need to prepare for anything. The chair will hold me up. So, one of the slides that I'm gonna show you here in just a moment is what a full, solid estate plan actually looks like. So, let's start off with, let's go back to the pyramid, if that's all right. Perfect. All right, so, this is just a very basic pyramid of the different areas of your life that you need to have consideration when it comes to the financial world. Now, Srini has covered all of those aspects, or all of those areas in the gray. I'm only going to cover a little few on the top. Because if you put all of this work into investing, all of this work into growing your wealth, but then you leave a mess for your loved ones when you're gone, and what good does that really do? So, we talked about cash flow versus management of accumulation, income tax, retirement. The problem with estate planning being at the very top of the pyramid is that most people don't ever make it up there. Matter of fact, only 30% of the population has anything in writing. Now, Srini's a mathematician in the room, not me, but that equates to about 10 of you would have an estate plan in place, and the rest of you would have nothing. So, what we would like to do is teach you a little bit about what is estate planning. And I am not a math person, so you can, are we able to get to the, let's get to the stool preview, the stool slide. The stool, the four-part stool slide. Is that one there? It should be it. There we go. All right, so this is a chair, I promise. So when we talk about what your estate plan need to have, then most people think about estates, they think about dying. But 3 of the 4 pieces of a solid estate plan actually only have to do with while you are living. So we start from the left. The first leg of the stool is the transfer document. This is the thing that most people think about when they think about estate planning. Srini mentioned wills and trusts. Those are the 2 primary ways that we transfer assets, or at least the 2 primary documents that we use to transfer assets. And yes, I'm going to go into more detail about each of these things. The reason I present this part is, again, every time you see a chair, hopefully it will remind you of having your estate plan in place. So the transfer document is important for transferring your assets and for directing how your assets will be used by the future generation. Next, we have your financial power of attorney. Your powers of attorney documents are actually much more important than people think they are. Injury, illness, and accidents don't care how much money you have in your bank account. So powers of attorney documents allow somebody or those people who you know, trust, and love to help make decisions in the event that you're not able to do so for yourself. Notice that has nothing to do with how much money you have. So powers of attorney do not care what your net worth is, because I do powers of attorney for 18-year-olds. Once you're an adult, if you go into a hospital and you are 18 or older, your parents no longer have the authority to make decisions for you. Well, in this room, if your child has turned 18 and goes into a hospital, you no longer have the authority to make decisions for them. So powers of attorney are incredibly important, just to make sure that if something ever did happen to you or did happen to a loved one, that there is somebody in place who can make those decisions. The last document over on the far right hand side is the living will. Yes, the last will and the living will get confused quite frequently. I say they have the same last name, but they are not related. So the living will is that end of life document. I call this the razor blade edge between life and death. If you ask somebody, what does life mean? You're probably getting a lot of esoteric, philosophical, religious, theological responses. you ask a lawyer what life is, they're gonna turn to the Tennessee Code, and Tennessee Code says if you have brain activity or heart activity, you are considered alive. Well, does anybody know how the electrical system of the body works? The electrical system is what runs the heart and the brain. We can artificially induce those things. You've probably heard people being on life support. Well, we can be vegetative and comatose but still be legally alive. Believe it or not, doctors are not allowed to kill people. If a doctor takes somebody off of life support, they're removing their life, right? So how do we get to do that? If we know that the person's life has no more quality to it, when is it okay to let them go? And that's what that living will does. The living will tells your loved ones whether or not it's okay, morally, ethically, legally, to let you pass away if it's only machinery that's keeping you alive. Again, notice I have not talked about net worth yet. Remember, an estate plan is important for everyone. Yes, there are going to be some estates that are larger than other estates. There are going to be some estates that are more complicated than other estates. But having an estate plan is vital. So, when we talk about what does an estate plan actually, thank you. So when we talk about what an estate plan, so what does an estate plan actually look like? It's a little bit small. I'm going to just use up a bit because I'm getting old. So over the left-hand side, we have the Italy Succession Act of 1956. So under new law, a person who passes away, their assets go to their spouse, their children, and their mother. I thought that was incredibly interesting. If you have no spouse, children, or your mother has passed, then the assets go to your siblings and to your father. From there, if you have no living siblings and you have no living father, they go to the male bloodline heirs, known as agnates. And if you have no male bloodline heirs, then they go to the female bloodline heirs, known as cognates. So that's what happens in India by default. So, Sri had mentioned that there is a bit of a cultural divide. In India, your assets already have a natural place to go. So a lot of people don't think about needing additional writing. They say, well, of course, that's what the law says. That's what I like to do. Well, you'll notice on the right-hand side, this is Tennessee law. And it says that if you pass away, your assets are divided between your spouse and your children. Do you notice that it doesn't say anything about adult children? It just says children. So if you have minors, that means that they get a share of the inheritance. A lot of people say, I don't need an estate plan because I'm married. Everything's going to go to my spouse. Well, as you can see, the default rule is that it goes to spouse and children. Whether your children are minors, whether your children have special needs, whether your children are receiving government benefit. Unfortunately, it does occasionally happen. We have children or loved ones who are addicted to drugs, alcohol, and gambling. This says the assets go to spouse and children, regardless of what those situations are. If you don't have a spouse or children, the assets go back up to your parents. Whether your parents are married to each other or not, whether a parent is not in the picture, doesn't matter. It goes back to your parents. Your parents aren't living, then it goes to your siblings. And if not your siblings, then your nephews and nieces. Fun fact, it is not a legal term, but we often refer to nephews and nieces as nibblings. Brothers and sisters are siblings, nieces and nephews are nibblings. I don't know if that's a legal straddle word, but it is a word. So if you look at this chart and you say, that's exactly where I want my assets to go, and I really don't care how they use the assets, then you're welcome to be part of that 70%. But if you say, I'm not really sure that that's how I want my assets to go, that's where your transfer documents come into play. So the first transfer document I'm talking about is your last will and testament. So your last will and testament is instructions to the court on what to do with your assets that require administration. Everything that you die with is part of your estate. And I envision that like a capital E for everything. Whether it's the house, the car, the furniture, the jewelry, the gold, whatever the case is, if you own it, it's part of your estate. But not everything in your estate becomes a probatable asset. Probate being the administration of assets through the court system. So let's look at the three different ways that you can own assets. The easiest way is you own it in your sole individual name. You buy yourself a piece of jewelry, you buy yourself a car. It's yours and yours alone. The second way you can own assets, mostly with married couples, or certainly could be brother, sister, friends, business partners, is to own assets jointly. Well, if there are two owners or more on a piece of property or an asset, and one of those living owners dies, the surviving owner does not have to go get permission from the court to continue to own an asset that they already own. Well, if they don't have to go get permission from the court, and I said the will is just instructions to the court, that means those jointly owned assets may do something differently than what the laws of intestacy tell us. I've had several occasions where I've had somebody who has put a significant other on a bank account, and then they have parted ways and they forgot to take them off of that bank account. More frequently, we see it with the third classification of assets, known as beneficiary designation assets. We often see somebody who either does not put a beneficiary on that account, or they have a beneficiary who is no longer part of their life. Beneficiary designation assets, much like jointly owned assets, do not require intervention. You have a private contractual agreement with Srini or one of the companies he works with that says, if I die, this asset will be distributed to this person or to these people. Well, that's wonderful if you want to minimize probate. It's not so good if you want to be a little bit more controlling over how your assets are used. I love beneficiary designations because they are easy. If you decide you want to update a beneficiary designation, you call Srini and you say, hey, I want to update my beneficiary designation. He goes, great, this is how you do it. You take care of it and you're done. You don't have to talk to a lawyer to do that. You don't have to go to court to do that. You make a phone call, fill out a form, probably, you put your signature somewhere, and now you've updated your beneficiaries. The challenge that we have with beneficiary designations, though, is it's like a light switch. It's either on or it's off. There's not really a way to control how those assets are used. Well, if your children are adults, they're successful, happy, healthy, beneficiary designations are great. I love them for that purpose. Beneficiary designations are not as beneficial if you have minor children, or again, if you have children who have special needs or who just maybe aren't living the way you'd like for them to live. So, how do we deal with more specific in our transfer of assets? Well, your last will and testament allows you to designate not only how, but when your assets pass to that next generation. Some wills will say, I just want everything to go to my spouse. Great. What happens if your spouse predeceases you? We want to put contingencies in there. Now we might say, if my spouse isn't here, then I want everything to go to my children. Okay? Well, you have two children who are in college and one who's still in high school. Are you sure that's really what you want to do with the assets? Well, if you don't want someone to get the assets outright in their hand to do with it whatever they want, this is where we move into the world of trusts. Now, when we think about trusts, if we only pay attention to the news, we will be tricked into believing that trusts are only for high net worth, high risk individuals. Trusts are actually very simple. A trust is literally, Srini says, Chad, we are out of ink pens, can you run to the store and go get me some? Here's my car. That's a trust. He's giving his asset to do with what his instructions are. It can't be any easier than that. It's your instructions to your loved ones on how to use your assets. That's all a trust is. Now, within the world of trusts, it's like playing in the sandbox. We can build whatever world we want to. So we can decide how we want to transfer assets to our next generation, not just whether we do want to transfer or not. We use some examples. So your children are doing really well. They're in college. They're on their way to being financial advisors, brain surgeons. And you say, I don't really need a whole lot of raise over them. They're doing really, really well on their own. But it would be really nice if they could mature just a little bit before they get everything in their life. Well, we can actually toggle the inheritance to say, we're going to give them a little bit at a certain age, and then give them a little bit more when they should be a little bit more mature, and then give them the rest when we know that they're much older. Notice I haven't used a lot of ages just yet. And that's because usually the ages of those distributions are based on the age of the client. If I have a 30-year-old client come to me and say, I need to create a trust for my children, they're probably not going to make their children wait until they're 50 to get the same assets that my 30-year-old client already has, right? But if my client's 70, they've lived a lot longer life, they've seen a lot more of these ups and downs that we talk about in the market, they know what can happen, and a lot of times my older clients want those agents to be older for their children, because they say, you know, at 65, I had to, you know, retirement, I had to go back and go back to work. It sure would have been nice if I had something to look forward to at that age when I couldn't find a job. So usually the older the client, the older they want those distributions to be for their children. Usually the younger the client, the younger they want those distributions to be. Equality and fairness are not the same thing in the law. So when we look at how we make those distributions, it may be that those distributions need to be different for different children. When they say that girls mature faster than boys, I have an older sister, so I don't agree with that, but that's what they say. It may be that you have a child who maybe has already proven that they're not very good with money, and we want to hold their assets for them a little bit longer. Maybe if you have another child who's great with money, and we say, you know what, they can just have it outright. Are the children going to be upset with you if you give all of the assets outright to one child and put them in trust for the other child? Yes. Does it matter? Not really, because it's your asset. It's your decision on how you want your assets to be used. The last thing we would ever want to do is we lend to somebody who's going to use it to harm themselves. So occasionally you need to put some guardrails in. And using a trust, you are allowed to do that. As long as it is legal, we are allowed to put as many guardrails in there as we want to. There have been some cases that have said that it's generally against public policy to pay somebody for getting a divorce. So you can't say, you don't want to get your inheritance if you get rid of that, you know, no good spouse of yours. Not really allowed to do that kind of thing. But we certainly can visit them for philanthropic endeavors. We can actually put language in there that says that if the child intentionally takes a nonprofit job or a low-income job, we can supplement because we want them to be valuable members of society. So with the trust language, we can make your documents do all of those things that you would want to do. You were still here with us. So, are there any questions about wills or trusts at this point?
I do have one question, and that is, what happened, like, in the case of Gene Hackman, whatever will and whatever trust he had done, everybody had died, and now the children went in probate. What is the law intent to see in this kind of a situation where, I mean, somebody like 20-year-old is making a will for the trust or whatever, and I mean, may have children after 60 years where he has to pass on the wealth. What will happen then?
So I often tell people that the reason I make a fairly decent attorney is because I'm an incredible pessimist. I look at all the bad things that can happen, and then I try to draft them out of the documents. So when I work with clients, we go through what I refer to as the parade of horribles. And we say, what happens if this person dies? Well, I want my assets to go here. Okay, well, what if they pass away? Well, then, in that case, I want them to go here. What if they pass away? I make the questions a little bit harder each time because that gives us a path that hopefully we cover all the bases and we say, if this whole generation is gone, this is what we look at. There's actually a provision in my documents, and in most attorney documents, I would say, it's called the remote contingent distribution. It's also known as the family disaster clause. And it says, if everybody I have named in this document is no longer here, this is where it'll go. Normally we look at charities for these other organizations. But it's also a good reason that we want to make sure our plans are still updated. There's no real legal right or wrong as how often you have to update your plan, but I typically tell my clients about every 5 years at least review it, even if you don't have to change it. Why I picked 5 years is because high school is typically 4, college is typically 4, and residential terms are typically 4. So within 5, something in the world has changed, whether it's individually in your family or whether it's the law around you. So just to catch all these people with pre-deceased, and now as they pre-deceased, what do we do now? Similar situation, I had a client who, my oldest client, she was 103 when she passed away. And we had to update her plan about every 6 months because she kept outliving everybody. And she was literally trying to figure out where can her money go. And she wasn't, substantially wealthy, but she still wanted her assets to go where she wanted them to go. And we kept having to find new places to give her money because she kept outliving everybody. So reviewing the plan usually will help alleviate that situation. When it comes to powers of attorney and naming your agents within your power of attorney, who you name is going to be a very important decision. But again, to kind of piggyback off of the question, when it comes to naming your agents and your powers of attorney documents, I always recommend at least 2 people, if not 3, because we don't know what the order of death or the order of operation is going to be. We can't force anybody to serve as an agent for our powers of attorney documents. So if we name a successor and potentially a 3rd successor after them, usually we will be ahead of the game if anybody either 1 predeceases us, or 2 just says, I don't want to do it. You give an example, my sister has children, they're both in college now, but when I did her will, she doesn't want to be involved in this. When I did her will several years ago, I said, don't name this a guardian because I don't want to be a guardian for your kids. If she had said, I'm going to name you anyway, I wouldn't have written it in there. But if another attorney had written it in there, I could have just said no. Right? So we don't know what your loved one's situation in life is going to be at the time that you need them to serve these roles. So redundancy is key. We like to have at least 2, if not 3 people named. Now, that does not mean that they all have to agree at all times. There are some nuances in there that we could get into one-on-one if you'd like to. But decide who you want to be in those particular roles. I typically advise not to name your 18 or 19-year-old children as your own financial power of attorney. Yes, they're legally allowed to, but do they really have the financial powers to do that job yet? Probably not. And we're not required to bound by the bloodline when we make these decisions either. We can name loved ones who aren't necessarily part of the family, people we work with, worship with, neighbors, etc. So we were deciding between a will and a trust. So which one's better, which one's worse? Well, which one's better, a screwdriver or a hammer? Depends on the job, right? Same thing with wills and trusts. It depends on the job. I never say one is better than the other, it's just one is more suited at times. I don't know if we should go from a will-based plan to a trust-based plan. There's no absolute hard and fast rule. I've come up with about 5 or 6 things I look for with clients that will push us from using a will to using a trust. First is, are they over this estate tax threshold? If you have a taxable estate, we're probably going to use a trust. What's the current taxable rate? Or what's the current estate tax exemption? It's $13.9 billion per person. And on January 1, it's going to jump up to $15 million per person. Well, most Tennesseans are under those numbers because that is per person, which means a married couple can have up to $30 million and you will pay 0 in estate taxes. We were doing a whole lot of trusts back in the early 2000s. We're not doing as many now, at least for tax planning purposes. We have giant exemptions, we have fewer tax liabilities. The other thing we look at is, do you own real estate in multiple states? If you own real estate in multiple states, then we potentially have to go probate in every single state where you own land. Well, if the trust owns the land instead of you, when you pass away, your trust is still living. So there would be an ability to avoid probate in multiple states. And unlike what other attorneys would say, I believe that the fewer attorneys you have to pay, the better. So if you don't have to hire attorneys in multiple states, that's probably going to be better for your loved ones. Next thing I look at is, do we have a blended family? Some cultures that's a bigger concern than other cultures, but if we do have blended families, the concern is that if the natural parent passes first, is the surviving spouse would cut out the stepchildren because now the person they married is gone. Happens all the time. So we use it with little trusts to protect against that. Because again, if you order to pass. Then we look at whether or not we have beneficiaries or children who have special needs. If you have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren with special needs, we want to make sure we're not disrupting any of their government benefits or any other benefits they might be receiving. So we consider using a trust for that purpose. I've mentioned a couple of times addictions. If we do have loved ones who have addictions, drug, alcohol, gambling, we don't want to fund those addictions, so we consider using trusts for those purposes. And then the last one is kind of the soft skill, which look at what does the family dynamic look like. You know, the joke is if your family doesn't have a black sheep, it's probably you. So we want to look at, do you have family members who are just kind of control? And we don't want to cut them out, we want to provide for them, but we need to control how we provide for them. And that's going to change based on the family itself. So those are just some of the things I look at when I'm saying, is this plan a will-based plan or is it a trust-based plan? So we want not only but we also look at the funding of the assets. As we talked about a minute ago, the three ways that you can own property, your individual name, your joint name with someone else, and by beneficiary designation. It may be that when we create a trust for you, that we name the trust as the beneficiary rather than the person themselves. So for example, you have two teenage children, we don't want to name your teenage children as beneficiaries of your $2 million life insurance policy, because the day they turn 18, probably not going to be making the best decisions ever. So instead, we could create a trust for the children that says, these trusts are going to distribute out a little bit at a time until they turn 30. So give them a little bit each year, let them kind of get their feet wet in the marketplace and that kind of thing. Well, we can use beneficiary designations to do that. So that's how one of the many ways that the Sri's expertise merges well with mine. Speaking of the merging of the expertise, any one of you who actually goes to Sri to get some financial advice and get a consultation with him, maybe let me know it. I will waive my consultation fee for you as well if you decide to come talk to me. So let's see here. We talked about beneficiary designations, trusts, wills. Do you have any questions about what I've talked about? Yes.
You know, you mentioned about the tax. How does that work when the distribution of wealth comes from estate planning, right? So how does the tax happen when the distribution of wealth?
Sure. So there are several layers of taxation that we have to deal with. Of course, the first one is the estate tax. As I mentioned, as long as your estate's under 13.9 million this year and 15 million next year, there's zero taxes there. So
That is the value of the estate, right? Not
Correct.
distributing, right?
no, it's the full value of the estate. It includes real estate, it includes life insurance, which most people don't even think to calculate in the estate because they don't have it yet until they're gone. Yes, it includes everything that is part of your estate that you have dominion and control over.
Assume if you have kids and after certain age, if they are getting that wealth, how does the taxation work for them?
For who?
For the kids?
So the estate tax is taxed to the estate itself, not to the beneficiaries. There is there is an inheritance tax that is taxed to the beneficiaries. Tennessee got rid of its inheritance tax back in 2015. I'm not familiar with what Mississippi does, so if they're Mississippi residents, I'm not sure what they did with theirs. Tennessee got rid of its inheritance tax, so beneficiaries don't pay anything to the state of Tennessee. There are gift taxes while they're living, which is a different topic. Of course, income taxes, more of your accounting/screening world. So did that answer the question? Did you have another question about other? And then, yes.
So my question is, if say a person has like 5 people on their will or trust, and they have decided what goes to whom, is it better to inform and get an acknowledgement from the people when you're living versus like dying and then they are fighting for like I didn't get enough or whatever?
That is a incredibly poignant question. Thank you for bringing that up. I promise I did not think I to ask that question. It is a very good question. So the reason that we put things in writing is because it's really hard to argue with paper. It's really easy to argue with memory. Something that I often lecture about is if you go to the grocery store, you just go to the grocery store like I do, and just wander the aisles and go, oh, I didn't need that, oh, I didn't need that. Or you pre-plan them, I didn't make a list. You say, oh, I need to forget milk and bread and eggs and water. Well, if your groceries are important enough to write down, shouldn't the entirety of your estate be worth writing down? So when you ask about should you let them know, you're going to hear different answers from different attorneys. I'm very much a private person, so I encourage my clients to only share what's absolutely necessary, because what we don't want to happen is for one of your loved ones to anticipate an inheritance that they're not going to get later on. So if we tell our kids, I'm going to give you the most because you help take care of me at the end of my life, and I'm not going to give them as much, but then you go to an attorney and you decide to write wills and everything goes equally, well, somebody's going to get disappointed. Because they say, well, I was told something different. So I'm not a huge fan of letting them know exactly what they're going to be getting. It is good, though, to have a conversation with your loved ones about what the general viewpoint of your estate is, because if they hear it from you, it's going to be a little bit softer than if they hear it from me. So, yes, communication is important, but I would hesitate to say, I very rarely clients to get copies of their documents to their loved ones. Because again, if you need to change your document, it makes a really awkward conversation, say, hey, can I have my will back because I need to cut you out of it? But there's a balance, there really is. Now, most documents, including all of my documents, have what's called a contest clause. The contest clause says that anybody fights with or contests the language of the document, they get cut out completely. And we actually go so far as to say they are considered to have pre-deceased me. So, every now and then I will have somebody call me and they'll get all grumpy because they're not getting what they think they deserve in a will, and I'll have them turn to one of the last pages of the will, that's usually where the contest clause is, and I'll say, read that to you. And they'll start reading it. And then they'll get slightly lower, and slightly lower. And then it's the word deemed, or the words deemed to have pre-deceased me. And then you go get in the phone call. So we do have safeguards that are prevent as much as possible fighting amongst family.
That's right. Could you tell our crowd, our people, they don't know what's probate and intestate because of cultural differences. Can you briefly tell us?
So probate, as we mentioned earlier, is just the administration of your estate through the court system. So if you do have assets that are your sole individual name, that is, they don't have a natural place to go. So not the assets that are joint names with a living person, not the assets that have a beneficiary listed on them. Any asset that is in your name alone would go through the court system. And that's what the will is for. The will is to give instructions to the court on how you want your probate assets to go. Now, when we use the word intestate, if you think about last will and testament, to die testate with a T just means to die with a will. You've taken the time and the energy to write down what you want your instructions to be. So that means you die testate, or with a writing. To die intestate means to die without a writing. But when you die without a writing, you get stuck into the default rules. So most people do rely on the default rules. Like I said, 70% of the population has nothing in place. But 30%, thankfully, wonderful question.
Any constraints or downside if you're custodian or beneficiary is outside of the country?
The downside of
Any downside if my beneficiary or custodian is outside of the country?
excellent question. So when it comes to beneficiaries outside of the country, there are limitations on what we transfer out of the country. Typically, what we would do in that case is we would probably create a trust account for them. The trust account would be located in the U.S. domestically. It would have a U.S. trustee within the beneficial assets could be transferred as needed. But then you're looking at national treaties on taxation. Definitely gives us more details than what we're doing here. But typically, you're going to have, if you have a trust, you're going to have a domestic trustee over it. So you can have international beneficiaries, but you have to have a minimum amount of the assets located in the U.S. and then actually have a U.S. citizen or U.S. custodian over those assets.
Are there any precautionary measures as a parents? Suppose we have US born citizens that we need to take care. I heard that in case if the parents passes away, then they are sent to foster homes and things like that. So is there anything the parents need to do?
Yes, so anytime I have clients who have children who are under age 18, Mississippi is 21, Tennessee is 18, we always want to appoint guardians. Now, the court system is still in charge of appointing the guardian for your minor children. But the court has no idea who you are, the court has no idea who your children are. So what we do is we name guardians in your documents to give the court who you would want them to choose. The court will always go, or at least is supposed to, always go with what they believe is in the best interest of the child. So, for example, you might say, well, I want my uncle to raise my children, but my uncle lives in India, but he's still the best person to raise my children. Well, the court might look at your children and say, well, they're 17, they have one semester of high school left, why would we disrupt them, send them to India for one semester, and then come back to the U.S. to go to college? So the courts can look at the list